Hello and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. US President Donald Trump will meet officials from Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Indonesia, and Pakistan to discuss the Gaza crisis amid Israel's escalating assault. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt has said that local media also reported that Trump will also present a proposal for post-war governance in Gaza. Russia's defense ministry has said that its forces have destroyed 150 Ukrainian drones over Moscow, Crimea, and western regions within 24 hours, while Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin has confirmed 33 were downed near the capital, disrupting flights at Sheremetyevo Airport. Copenhagen and Oslo airports, the busiest in the Nordic region, have now reopened after hours-long shutdowns caused by large drones that stranded passengers. Danish air police has said that the drones were seen near Copenhagen airport for 4 hours and Oslo airport for 3 hours, but no suspects have been identified yet. Hong Kong has raised its typhoon signal to the third highest as Super Typhoon Ragasa, the world's most powerful storm of this year. It has forced the shutdown of schools, businesses, and disrupted over 700 flights so far, while southern Chinese cities and Taiwan have activated evacuations and shelters in preparation. Guinea's new constitution appears that it is set to pass with 90.6% support from more than 4.8 million votes casted, potentially allowing coup leader Mamadi Doumbouya to run for president. Turnout exceeded 70% in the referendum, marking a critical shift since Doumbouya seized power in 2021 in the resource-rich nation. Massive floods have inundated 220,000 hectares of rice fields in Pakistan, threatening wheat, sowing, cotton output, and the textile sector. While causing billions in damage to farms and cities, the crisis now jeopardizes the government's 4.2% growth target for 2026 and will prompt the IMF to review the 2026 budget under its $7 billion bailout program. NVIDIA will invest up to $100 billion in OpenAI through non-voting shares and supply data center chips, with an initial $10 billion commitment, and plans to deploy at least 10 gigawatts of computing power by 2026. The deal, which boosted NVIDIA shares by 4.4% to a record high, but raises potential antitrust scrutiny amid the global AI race. China has ordered schools and businesses to shut in 10 cities as Super Typhoon Ragasa approaches the south. Authorities warn residents to stay indoors, with Shenzhen and other major urban centers high on alert. The Philippine Coast Guard has said that at least one person has been killed and 6 remain missing after a fishing boat that was capsized in the wake of Super Typhoon Ragasa. Drone shots have shown flooding in Philippines after heavy rain brought by Super Typhoon Ragasa hit the country. Ragasa had swept through northern Philippines on Mondays, prompting President Ferdinando Marcos Jr. to order the country's disaster response agency to go on full alert and mobilize all government agencies. The Philippine Coast Guard has evacuated many residents in northern Philippines. Meanwhile, satellite videos have shown that Super Typhoon Ragasa is moving towards the South China Sea. Hong Kong is bracing itself for Ragasa. The city has shut schools and some businesses. Let's listen in to a resident from Hong Kong describing this situation.
I'm now here at the airport. I've taken my chance to come here to see if I can find anything else. If not, I have to go back to Hong Kong and just book again into the hotel. Lucky enough, I reserved the room, so If it doesn't work out, at least I have a place to stay.
Hundreds of passenger flights have also been cancelled as Ragasa approaches Hong Kong. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Desmond Majekodunmi. He's an environmentalist, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Desmond, for joining us again. Good to see you in this show. Now, how has this super typhoon Ragasa impacted northern Philippines from what we know so far?
Well, so far, the casualty rate is quite low, although we've heard that some people are missing. But beyond that, the reality is the amount of anxiety and terror that such an announcement and such a expression of this type of powerful hurricane. I mean, we're talking of winds at an incredibly high speed. This is, hurricane. This is this type of super typhoon is actually Hurricane 5 category. So wind speeds are going right up into the 100 of kilometers. And it must be really, really terrifying for all the people in this particular location. The anxiety and the worry that, will we get caught up in this? Are we going to be safe even though we've been advised to evacuate certain areas? Because you can never be sure exactly what direction that wind will take, how far it will go, and whether the speed will abate. So it is a very, very worrying situation for the people of that location. But it's also a warning because more of these super typhoons have been happening, more hurricanes have been blowing more voraciously all over the world with the attendant type of heavy rainfall and sea surges. And we were warned that this would happen. We were warned almost 15 years ago that this will definitely happen. And the same people who predicted this precise warning are telling us that it's going to increase because of what we are doing to the planet. In this case, it's particularly the atmosphere. We're pumping far too many heat-trapping gases into the atmosphere. So it's like a direct karma reaction of us getting back what we're sowing into nature.
Yes, and Desmond, furthermore, what measures has this Philippines government taken in response to this typhoon? And do you think these measures will be enough to counter or keep their citizens safe in this case?
Yes, I do believe that the Philippine government has a fairly effective disaster relief and type of a fast reaction. The president certainly has taken it up. And we have seen in the past that they've been quite active. They will deploy the armed forces as and when necessary. So we are hopeful that this intervention from the government will have a good protection, at least it'll offer a lot of help for the people, as we've seen in the past. But they need to prepare for more. As we said earlier, this is just a warning, because definitely, there's no doubt about it, these type of weather events shall be coming more voraciously, more often in the near future, and we need to be prepared effectively for that.
Right. Thank you very much, Desmond Majekodunmi, for joining us and sharing your insight all the way from London. Now we move on to our next news. Russian airstrikes have killed 2 civilians in Ukraine overnight, authorities said, while Russia reported multiple Ukrainian drones targeted Moscow. 1 woman was killed and 3 injured in Odesa with damage to a hotel and civilian buildings, according to local emergency services. Kyiv has warned that Russia's new wave of long-range drone attacks on railways and infrastructure is systematic, aiming to spread panic and disrupt civilian transport, though military cargo transit has remained stable. Ukraine has continued retaliatory strikes on Russian targets, destroying drones and striking military positions, while the General Staff has reported 156 combat engagements along front lines, including Kharkiv, Donetsk, and Kherson. Russia has claimed it captured a new settlement in the Dnipropetrovsk region, while Ukraine reported counter-offensive progress, reclaiming 1.3 square kilometers in Donetsk, according to Commander-in-Chief Alexander Zelnskyy. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, what strategic moves have both Russia and Ukraine made in the Dnipropetrovsk and Donetsk regions?
Certainly good to be with you. As per our previous conversations, we are seeing what you've just reported on, which is drones flying from the Ukraine into Russia, from Russia into Ukraine. Ukraine has been targeting the oil infrastructure that Russia and the gas that Russia relies on, in which to finance this war and perpetuate this war. They are really working hard to actually damage the economy of Russia. There's of course other countries are putting in sanctions, but they're really trying to do that to then bring the price of oil down, where they believe that it's crippling Russia, to then bring it to the table. And of course Russia is continuing to send their drones in to a part of as their effort, which adds to the propaganda of saying, well, we're taking this village, we're taking this village. And on the previous conversation, when someone else had actually done a load of research and said if Russia carries on at this rate, they might fully take Ukraine by 2256. The number one thing is we also see the frustration from the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, who was frustrated that Vladimir Putin will not stop this war, as he wishes to get them to the table to then have a negotiation. As we see all these drone incursions on both sides continue, and we don't seem to see it, without saying the obvious, we don't seem to see it stopping at the moment, Asuma, which is what we want to, because we want to see them coming to the negotiating table, Asuma.
Right. And building on that, Mark, do you think that the talks have stalled between, or the U.S., it first was very enthusiastic, President Trump was very enthusiastic about trying to stop this war, and now he seems to have gotten almost mute about it. He hasn't talked about this in weeks. So what do you think? Where is the negotiation? Is there still chances of him trying to negotiate peace between these two countries?
You ask a very fair question, and I think not that I'm speaking on behalf of the president, the administration there. I think there has been other distractions. One being the appalling assassination of Charlie Kirk. There's also what is happening in Israel, but there is in Gaza. The frustration is from President Trump of how to then bring Russia to the negotiation table behind the scenes. Even, I believe, if I've read that correctly, that the Europeans have then announced more sanctions, and it could mean that 2,300 companies are then sanctioned against. They are working hard to then, in their mind, to sanction companies that are dealing with Russia, but to really target the energy. So we don't know fully what discussions are going on behind the scenes, but I hope that those discussions are then continuing. And just because we may have not had a public announcement doesn't mean, Asuma, that those discussions are not happening. But I will caveat with say, I think there is a lot of frustration from Donald Trump, understandably, and also just remember that over the last 4 years under the Biden regime, there was no conversation whatsoever with Russia at all, when they should have been immediately to stop this from Russia, from Europe as well. However, the people criticize President Trump, but at least on one level he is trying to then have a conversation. Now we may go on to discuss of course, where we've seen the fact that the Russians have sent, there's drones that have gone into Poland, drones that are on the edge of other countries. That now raises other issues because the Americans are really looking at to the Europeans to then step up under NATO and to then provide weapons support to the Ukraine. That has been going on since February 2022, after the Russians invaded. But that then begins to raise another discussion as well, Asuma.
Right. Yes, Mark, thank you very much for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin offers to continue to adhere to the New START nuclear arms agreement for 1 year after its current expiry date in February 2026. Let's listen into what President Putin has said.
Поэтому Россия готова после 5 февраля 2026 года продолжить в течение 1 года придерживаться центральных количественных ограничений по договору о СНВ.
Meanwhile, the White House has said that Russia's proposed 1-year extension to the last treaty limiting both countries' nuclear weapons sounds pretty good. Spokesperson Caroline Leavitt has said that U.S. President Donald Trump is aware of the proposal and wishes to make public comments on it. Let's listen into what she has said.
Russia. The president is aware of this offer extended by President Putin, and I'll let him comment on it later. I think it sounds pretty good, but he wants to make some comments on that himself, and I will let him do that.
Now, for this discussion, we go back to Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for staying with us. Now, yes, like we discussed in our earlier discussion, that President Trump is trying to keep the doors open between between U.S. and Russia, which the previous administration did not do. So what does U.S. President Donald Trump have in the discussion, or what responsibility does he have in the discussion about this treaty's extension?
I believe this is the treaty that they would call the START Treaty. I think that was signed 2010. I hope I have that right. But any discussion to then say, well, we will continue this treaty because we will then not mount up in regard to nuclear proliferation, that's a good thing. However, we then have to look at the other armaments that the Russians have in regard to ballistic missiles, new technology on those fronts. And I'm sure that if the administration then look at this and handle this, yes, okay, that's fantastic. We'll have a discussion about extending this treaty. That's fantastic, but we need to address other issues as well. Now, this is my opinion. You could also say that with the state of the Russian economy, no matter how that then is projected, is not necessarily as good as they would like to project. Any situation that they can have to say, well, we don't have to spend money here because we can then save it, that would be something economically they need to look at. But they were warned. They were warned even by someone that was in the Kremlin of the cost, which just being pushed out. I think that's called Dmitry Kavosk. That this is an expensive venture in regard to Ukraine. So all of these must be in their minds all at the same time, Asuma.
Right. And how do you think, how has the White House responded to Russia's proposal?
Well, you've just heard Caroline Leavitt say, I will leave that to the president to then make remarks, which would be, as she is the head of communications officer in that sense, by being that public speaker of the administration, she would then be fed orders in a way or advice to say this. But Trump will be making an announcement, because I'm sure that announcement will be tied in to what then is happening in Ukraine, and with all the economic sanctions and all including his frustration about not being able to get Putin to the table to then say we need to end this.
Right.
Asuma.
Thank you very much, Mark, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on and we stay in Europe. Copenhagen Airport, the busiest in the Nordic region, reopened early today after a nearly 4-hour shutdown due to drone sightings. Norway's Oslo Airport also resumed operations after closing its airspace overnight. Danish police are investigating the drones which disappeared before being seized and are collaborating with Norwegian authorities. Copenhagen halted operations at 8:26 p.m. local time on Monday, diverting around 50 flights. After reopening, the airport warned of ongoing delays and cancellations. These disruptions follow a recent cyber attack that affected multiple European airports, including London Heathrow and Berlin. Let's listen into what a senior police inspector, Copenhagen Police, Jens Jespersen, has said.
I forbindelse med vores arbejde derude er det vores vurdering, at der selvfølgelig har været en potentiel risiko for lufttrafikken. Hvis man flyver rundt med droner i et luftrum omkring en lufthavn, er der en potentiel risiko. Vi er ikke vidne om, at der har været konkrete faresituationer, altså at mennesker konkret har været i fare i går aftes eller i nat, og det tror jeg er vigtigt at få sagt.
Now for this discussion, we go back to Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for staying with us. Now looking at this, how scary or anxious is this that there was drone and it's not seized, and also we don't know who did this?
Well, understandably, the Danish authorities are rather concerned, and this is in the backdrop of what Russian drones were recently. In the last few days, we've seen an incursion into Poland. Whether that was deliberate or an accident is up to a lot of discussion. We don't know. The drones, as you said, they came in, they disappeared, they've shut down for 4 hours. I think this happened also in Oslo as well, and in Copenhagen. This kind of disruption, as it's happened in Heathrow over here in the UK, and before that, I think over the last few years in Gatwick, causes unbelievable amount of chaos, because suddenly planes aren't allowed to take off, which means they're not taking off, so they're not in the area that they landed where they should be, and it also affects the economy of those particular industries and the airports and all the chaos that comes out. I think we have to put in mind, as I just said, the drones that have gone into Poland, and then suddenly all the airplanes are then grounded there. That will be in all of the authorities' minds, and it raises the tension. So I think that is what is going on. It looks like they've turned around and saying, looks like the people doing this, they were really practicing, showing off what they could do. Well, they've just showed off the fact that they have completely shut down an airport for 4 hours, and now the authorities will try and work out where they have come from and who is behind it. I'm sure as soon as they are able, because the last thing they want is to then have a repeat performance of this.
Yes.
Asuma.
And Mark, what is your analysis on how is the security of European airports? Since we have seen a lot of disruption this year, including many cyber attacks and now these drone attacks.
It becomes extremely. It raises a lot of tension for the citizens of those countries, especially if they're flying away on holiday and they're looking forward to that and looking forward to those breaks. Cynically, I could begin to say that it would give various thought within various governments of how we then can control our population. What other systems do we have to bring in to make sure this kind of things doesn't happen, or do we have to then accept that airports are going to regularly shut down? This is going to be part of the way that we have to live. Personally, I find that intolerable. But people come out with and appalling actions in a sort of problem, reaction, solution mindset.
Yes.
It's deeply troubling, but it does show the digital age that we are in. And as
Yes.
you've said in regard to the digital attacks and what precautions that we are going to have to take. What they will be, I don't fully know, but it's the cost of that. But it seems an
Yes.
incremental, at times, an attack on people's individual freedoms. Assuming.
Right. And once again, these are not drone attacks, but drone incidents that were seen in these airports. Thank you very much, Mark, again for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we move on to our next news. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has been charged with 3 counts of crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court, officials have announced on Monday. The charges stem from his deadly war on drugs, alleging he was criminally responsible for dozens of murders carried out by police and others during his tenure as mayor and president. The ICC's redacted charge sheet dated July 4th alleges Duterte's involvement as an indirect co-perpetrator in 19 killings in Davao City between 2013 and 2016. The second count relates to 14 murders of high-value targets across the country between 2016 and 2017. The third count concerns the murder and attempted murder of 45 people during village clearance operations from 2016 to 2022. ICC prosecutors claim Duterte and his alleged co-perpetrators shared a common plan to neutralize alleged criminals in the Philippines through violent crimes including murder, noting the scale of victimization was significant. Now we move on to our next news. A woman has been found guilty by New Zealand court of murdering her 2 young children and hiding their bodies in suitcases for years until their remains were accidentally discovered. The jury at the Auckland High Court has found Kyung Lee guilty of the double murder, rejecting an insanity defense made by her lawyers. Lee has been found guilty of killing her 6-year-old son, Minu Jo, and 8-year-old daughter, Yuna Jo, in June 2018, several months after her husband died from cancer. Lee, who is a New Zealand citizen, had left for South Korea after the killings in 2018 and changed her name. She was later tracked down and extradited from South Korea in November 2022 after the discovery of her children's bodies. Murder carries a mandatory life sentence in New Zealand, with judges required to set a prison term of at least 10 years before an offender can apply for parole. Lee will be sentenced on November 26. Well, this is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.